And then you go into the next week, which was the acting challenge, the ShakesQueer. Is that something else that how did you feel about that? Did you feel confident? Have you done acting before?
Yes, so I went to school for theater. I've done all sorts of acting. I played Macbeth in Shakespeare, not ShakesQueer. I was queer, but you know the story. And I had been on stage many different productions. I was nervous about receiving a script and 5 minutes later having to have it memorized without any rehearsal. I wasn't thinking about television having like the opportunity to do a few takes and chase this thing. So it was fun. It was clear I was chosen to be Miss Chardonnay as the boozy older queen, and it made sense that I was sort of the kind of the judgy older gal. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I don't think that particular episode and that performance is celebrated very much. A lot of people think it was terrible.
So that was going to be my question. I think it was an iconic challenge just because your group was actually the safe group, like, you know,
right.
Whatever, your whole group, but you were safe. But the other group, obviously, that was kind of a bit shambles, and RuPaul even said this is the worst I've ever seen in 7 seasons. I was going to ask, did you know that that's what was going to happen? Did you see the other group, or was it when you watched it back on the tape for the first time that you realized how bad it was?
We knew then it was bad, and because RuPaul really flipped out, because their group didn't want to do it, they didn't want to try, they didn't want to do a second take, they were not being very cooperative. In our group, Jaden struggled with the memorization and burst into tears and had that moment, but it was fixed. Again, the pressure of having to memorize in minutes is really what I think it came down to. And I think there was some of the gals just didn't know, they didn't feel as though they knew what to do. And so there was struggling there, but Rue made a point of it. I mean, just that group got really ripped to shreds. So we knew it was not good.
And so one thing I've always wondered on that particular episode, because I thought that episode was iconic, maybe not for the right reasons, but it was definitely memorable. Yeah. After they played each performance, they sort of cut to the judges, and on your teams, they sort of like laughed, or like Rue pretended to cry. Right. And then when we got to the other teams, there was like a smattering of applause, and everyone looked really awkward.
Well, there you have it, ladies.
Was that how it really was when you were watching it back on stage, or was that kind of done for editing purposes?
As far as I can remember, that's how it really was. I think they camped it up and played it up a little bit, but Rue was not happy.
I think that's one of the first times, and maybe only times really, that we've seen Rue really snap it and say, be prepared, just do it, stop giving me crap.
Yeah. Rue and Pearl had a lot of friction. But yes. And Pearl, walked off the set, and there was this big drama, and Rue had to get all this conversation. And so those three, it's like, well, if they want to go, let them go and let the rest of us compete. So that was very frustrating for me.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you always seemed like the consummate professional. One thing we mentioned about Pearl, that was going to be one of my questions, and we sort of briefly touched on this earlier. So earlier in that episode was the infamous moment where Pearl and RuPaul had a bit of a standoff or sit-off, because she was sat down and she said, have I got something on my face?
So there's something on my face.
Right.
Were you there for that moment, and did you see it happen?
So we were across the room, as it were, and the tension with the two of them was palpable. It was always a bit that way. I'm not sure why, per se. I think that it was maybe an older queen like Rue and myself not understanding Pearl's perspective, and sort of they just didn't necessarily get on. And she made it to the top, and she is an incredible artist, and she's sort of shift gears, and she's doing different things now. But I think at any point, wherever she wants to go, she's well regarded, and people think she's a fabulous queen and on a hunk of a man. So, but yeah, I think the experience in itself was, it appeared as though, you know, sometimes Pearl wanted to challenge Rue as much as Rue wanted to challenge Pearl. And I think Rue comes from a time where it was like, respect your elders and don't snap back at Rue. Like if you had a moment together, maybe vent about it with your sisters, but not snap. But Pearl was not going to back down. She was going to tell Rue right what she thought. And I think that bugged Rue.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it made for good television at the end of the day. So, you know, you could tell there was maybe a slight personality clash. Maybe it was also a slight age thing as well. I don't know. But it was just interesting. That moment was just so gag-worthy. And I couldn't tell whether the other queens really caught on to it in the moment or whether it was on TV. You know.
Oh, no. Yeah, we were well aware. There was yelling and people leaving and, you know, all that stuff. You know, you film for 12 to 15 hours a day and the public gets to see what, half an hour, an hour?
One thing that I was going to ask actually about that moment was when the lip sync finished, they made it look like twice you went to say something to Candy and then they cut it off and they put that sort of rattle shade noise in the background almost like she didn't really speak to you. Is that what actually happened?
Thank you.
Mrs. Kasha Davis.
Yeah, I went to go give her a hug and she didn't reciprocate. So I walked over to the girls and immediately I'm like, what did I do? Yes, Jasmine and Kennedy wanted to go home. They kept saying it, or not Kennedy, Jasmine and Candy wanted to go home. They kept saying it over and over. It's like, let me go home. I want to go. I want to go. They had to coach Jasmine to come back to the set. It's very stressful.